"You're not on the list anymore, Evelyn. It must have been an oversight." She smiled as she said it. Marilyn Ashford, chair of the committee, her manicured fingers brushing invisible lint from her satin collar. I stood there, holding my husband's old scorecard holder in both hands. The cracked leather creaked faintly. I didn't say a word, just nodded and turned away, as if I had somewhere more important to be. Truth was, I'd driven 2 hours in stiff shoes and a rented Lincoln to be here. This was the club where I'd once chaired every damn luncheon, where Harold and I danced under the tent the night he made partner, where I'd taught half their wives how to make perfect soufflés and the other half how to keep a secret. And now I was, forgotten? Erased? I walked out past the valet and kept going. My car was parked 2 blocks over in the back lot of a shuttered bakery. I sat in the driver's seat, heart pounding, fingers tight around the leather pouch. My throat burned. Inside the glove box was a thick manila envelope with a post-it that read, "File if triggered." I peeled it open. Deed documents, purchase contracts, mineral rights, all quietly transferred to me 6 months ago, back when Harold's golf buddy tipped me off that the club had never secured the subplots under holes 7 through 9. I only needed one. The 9th. The one with the scenic bluff view, where they held every engagement photo and Mother's Day brunch. I scrolled through my phone, found the number, and hit dial. "Ms. Carter?" My attorney answered on the second ring. "Shut it down," I said. A long pause. "All of it?" "Start with the 9th. I ended the call and set the phone on the passenger seat. The country club's sprinkler system kicked on in the distance, misting the dark turf under the moonlight. I could already see the closed for repairs sign in my mind. Let them wonder, let them sweat, because this was only phase 1. They didn't see me at first. Booth by the window, 3 of them. George Whitman, Walter Dane, and crusty old Frank Baylor. The same men who used to slap Harold on the back and call me the glue of this damn place. Now they stared down at their cell phones like a jury avoiding the condemned. The waitress slid my coffee down without a word. Darlene, she still had Harold's picture up by the register, still called me Mrs. C. "Rough crowd this morning," I said, stirring cream into the dark swirl. "You'd think somebody died." She leaned in. "They heard." "Course closed. 9th hole." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Panic like you wouldn't believe." I raised my eyebrows. "That right?" From the corner of my eye, I watched George pull out his phone, muttering something about scheduling and damage control. Frank looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. Darlene placed a plain envelope on my table, hidden beneath the check. "Came with your name on it. Left behind the counter last night," she said, then walked off like she hadn't said a thing. I opened it slow. A photograph. Old, weather-faded. Harold, grinning in a white polo, standing next to Lawrence Cobb, the original builder of the club back in '72. Both of them barefoot in the dirt behind the starter shed. On the back, in Harold's slanted hand, "Check the cornerstone. Behind the shed. H." I pressed the photo flat against the table. My pulse kicked up like a lawnmower pulling to life. Whatever was back there, Harold wanted me to find it. And if it had anything to do with Cobb, it was worth more than history. It was leverage. I tucked the photo into my coat, left a 20 under the cup, and stood. Let them keep sipping their lattes and shuffling tea times. I was heading straight to the club, and they had no idea what was already missing. The fog hadn't lifted yet, low and thick across the 9th fairway like a secret trying to stay hidden. I parked near the maintenance gate and slipped in through the gap between the chain link and the hedgerow. My steps were slow, steady, the kind of walk you take when your breath matters. The starter shed hadn't changed much. Same chipped green paint, same crooked window blinds. The back corner was sunken, just like Harold always said it would be. I knelt down. Pine needles clung to my slacks as I brushed them aside and reached under the first row of stones. My fingers hit something hard. Metal. Cold. A box. I tugged it out, heart thumping so loud I thought it might echo. The old lock had rusted through. No key needed. just a twist. Inside, yellowed papers, a few black and white photos. Harold, younger than I'd ever seen him, shaking hands with Cobb, dirt on their sleeves, and then a letter, neatly typed on fading Cobb development letterhead. I unfolded it slowly. My eyes scanned the opening lines, and then I saw it. A clause tucked into the final paragraph. Parcel 9 shall remain designated for leisure and family recreation only. Commercial repurposing or restricted private events shall be grounds for reversion to original deed holder or his assigned entity. My breath caught. The club had hosted weddings, rented out the bluff for private fundraisers, half a dozen contract breaches easy. They didn't own the 9th. Not really. Not legally. And if I played this right, they never would again. A noise broke the silence. Tires crunching gravel. Headlights cut through the mist, sweeping over the far end of the green. Someone was coming. I snapped the box shut, stood up fast, and ducked behind the shed. Let them come. I had what I needed, and soon they'd realize just how much they'd lost. I stayed crouched, breath shallow, the cold damp crawling up my legs. The white truck idled 10 yards away. Out stepped Marilyn Ashford, her usual pearls replaced with a windbreaker zipped to her throat. She looked around, phone clutched tight, her voice sharp in the still air. "I don't care if it's Sunday. Get the contractor back. Now. We need a fence up by noon." Pause. "No, not just signage. Fencing. I don't want anyone sniffing around the 9th. If a lawyer gets involved, we're screwed." Another pause. "What do you mean the title was never cleared? I told you to verify Cobb's parcel deeds 2 years ago." Her voice dropped then, angry and scared. "I want this buried. Fast." I felt a flicker of satisfaction. She was already sweating. Marilyn turned, muttering into her phone, and disappeared back into the cab. The truck backed out, taillights glowing like fading embers in the fog. I waited till the engine was gone before moving. Every joint ached from the cold. But I had the box. And now, something more valuable. Proof they were nervous. Back in my car, I laid the contents out on the passenger seat, hands still shaking. The typed letter was clear enough, but there, tucked behind one of the photo sleeves, was a folded sheet of lined paper, Harold's handwriting. "Ev, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I found the clause years ago. Didn't say anything because I knew what you'd say, always the peacemaker. But this land? I bought it for you, for safety. If they ever turn on you, you use it. No mercy. Love, H." The ink blurred where my thumb pressed too long. I sat there, letting the words sink in, my throat thick. I took out my phone, scrolled to the bottom of my contacts, and hit the number labeled J. Denton, Gazette. Voicemail. "Jess, it's Evelyn Carter. I think you're going to want to see this." I ended the call and stared out across the mist-covered lot. They wanted it quiet. I was about to make it loud. The cafe smelled like burnt espresso and lemon polish, one of those places time forgot, where the linoleum floors still carried the footprints of 100 years. Jess Denton sat across from me in a flannel shirt and sneakers, scribbling notes into a legal pad already crowded with arrows and underlines. "Let me get this straight," she said, tapping the Cobb letter. "This clause reverts ownership if the land's misused. And you hold the deed?" I nodded, sipping coffee that tasted like old pennies. "It's valid, and they've violated it a dozen times." Jess leaned back, exhaling. "Damn." She was younger than I expected, maybe mid-30s, but sharp-eyed. The kind of woman who asked twice when someone said no. This could blow the roof off their donor base. Half the city council golfs here. You realize they'll come after you with everything, right? Legal threats, smear campaigns. I folded Harold's letter and slipped it back into the envelope. "Let them." Jess grinned. "You're kind of terrifying, Mrs. Carter." "I was a PTA treasurer for 11 years. You learn." We talked logistics, names, timelines. Jess promised to verify the deed against city filings. "I can run a teaser," she said, standing to leave. "Just a nibble for Monday's business column. No names, just a headline. Private land may undermine club's legitimacy. That okay with you? Perfect. She tapped her pen once more on the table. If they push back, we push harder. That night, the call came just after 10. Unknown number. I answered out of instinct. A man's voice. Cold. Measured. Stay out of it, Mrs. Carter. You don't know what you're messing with. Then the line went dead. I stood in the dark kitchen for a full minute, staring at the quiet hum of the microwave clock. Then I walked over to the fireplace, lifted Harold's photo from the mantel, and held it for a long time. In the drawer beneath the old phone book, there was a key labeled Safe Deposit. I turned it in my fingers. They wanted a warning? Here's mine. The banker was young and nervous, the kind who asked twice before turning the key. Are you sure, ma'am? I slid the box out myself. Cold, heavy, same silver edge I remembered from 15 years ago, back when Harold insisted we be ready for anything. Inside, one black folder labeled Contingency. It held photos, dozens of them. Aerial shots of the 9th green during club-sponsored galas, charity events, even a branded whiskey launch, each one time-stamped. Next came printed financial statements, suspicious transfers from event rentals, all violating the deed's intent. But it was the last document that stopped me cold. A letter. Cobb's own signature in blue ink. To Harold Carter, as per our agreement, the parcel under the 9th shall not be reassigned or repurposed without written consent from original deed holders or heirs. This is irrevocable unless legally nullified in court. L.C. Still binding, still ours. I drove home with the folder strapped into the passenger seat like a child. By the time I got in, the town had started buzzing. Jess's teaser headline was front page of the business section. Private clause could disrupt country club's core holdings. My phone buzzed twice. Unknown numbers. I let them ring. Then came the knock. Marilyn Ashford stood on my porch with a half-hearted smile and a bouquet of lilies. Thought I'd stop by, Evelyn. You know, just to catch up. Of course, I said, stepping aside. Always a pleasure. She looked around like an appraiser, lingering on the photos above the hearth, Harold in his tournament blazer, me in my apron holding the club's first charity check. You two were such a cornerstone, she murmured. I nodded, offering tea I had no intention of pouring. She fished. I dodged. 10 minutes later, she left. Smile brittle, tone polite. I waited until her car was gone before stepping outside. That's when I saw them. Deep, wet tire tracks cut across my side lawn. Not Marilyn's pattern. Someone else had been circling. I took out my phone, snapped 3 clear photos, and sent them silently to Jess. I didn't write a caption. I didn't need to. The envelope came hand-delivered, no stamp, no postmark, just crisp ivory stationery tucked inside a heavier-than-necessary folder with the club's gold emblem embossed up top. Dear Mrs. Carter, we would like to invite you to a conversation regarding recent misunderstandings surrounding Parcel 9. I didn't read the rest. The phrase, good faith mediation, might as well have been a shot across the bow. I folded it twice and slid it into my handbag, then drove straight to the Gazette. Jess read the letter with pursed lips. They're trying to box you in, build a paper trail. Next step will be noise complaints, civil suits, maybe even zoning board pressure. I slid her Harold's folder and pointed to the Cobb letter. She whistled. Still binding? With that signature? Still binding, I said. Jess nodded slowly, then pulled out her own sheet of notes. You'll want to see this, she said, sliding it across. Last year, a private political fundraiser happened on the 9th Bluff, closed to members, catered, security, fully rented. I raised an eyebrow. And? Guess who funded it? She tapped the name, Mark Callahan. Local magnate, national ambitions. The kind of man who plays golf in $900 shoes and doesn't like being told no. They took a check for $2 million, she said. And he's on record calling it the most exclusive venue in the state. Which makes it evidence, I replied, smiling. That night, I pulled the attic steps down and climbed into the dust. Harold's old boxes were still there, labeled in his careful print. One caught my eye. Recordings, 80s, property notes. Inside, under layers of maps and golf scorecards, lay a plastic cassette case, labeled Cobb, July '85. I brought it down, dusted off the old player, and pressed play. Static. Then a voice, deep, raspy, familiar. They'll never get that bluff, not unless they bury us first. It was Cobb. I leaned in, heart racing. Because what came next wasn't history. It was ammunition. The tape hissed like a snake in the dark. They tried it already, Cobb's voice crackled through. Last spring. Hired a lawyer, filed quiet claims, said the original clause was a drafting error. Harold's voice came faintly. What did you do? Walked the paperwork into county myself, Cobb replied. Stamped, filed, sealed, irrevocable. Unless a judge decides otherwise, and I made sure no judge would touch it without triggering a full audit. A pause. Keep your copy off-site. And Harold, if they ever come for Evelyn, don't hesitate. Don't ask. Act. I stopped the tape. Just sat there in the dim light of Harold's old study, the dust floating like soft ash in the air. He'd planned for this. By noon, Jess had published her second article, front page now, photos of tuxedoed guests sipping champagne beneath white tents on the ninth bluff, a smiling Callahan mid-toast. The headline, Private Party, Public Problem, Legal Clause Jeopardizes Club's Prime Real Estate. My phone rang twice. I didn't answer. Marilyn's voicemail came through minutes later. You've made your point, but this is war, Evelyn, and I promise you won't like how it ends. I deleted it without listening to the rest. At 4, I met Maurice Bell behind the hardware store on East Vernon, an old friend, former club accountant. He looked thinner than I remembered, grayer. I shouldn't even be talking to you, he muttered, glancing around. You were always Harold's friend, too, I said gently. He sighed, then handed over a folder. Expense reports, 2 years' worth. Callahan's party, the ghost payroll for Ashford's niece, the landscaping bid that never happened. Thank you, Maurice. Just promise me, my name stays out of it. It does. He left in a hurry. That night, as I stepped outside to bring in the trash bins, I found it. A sheet of white paper, taped crooked across my garage. Stop digging. No signature. I brought it inside, lit a match, and watched the flames eat it clean in my fireplace. And then I turned back to my desk, because now I knew I was close. Tuesday's sunrise painted the walls in bruised gold. It should have been beautiful. But the air felt heavier. By 9 o'clock, Jess's article was everywhere. Facebook feeds, talk radio, even the line at the pharmacy buzzed with it. Did you hear? That fancy club might have stolen land. By 10 o'clock, a councilman had tweeted, If private venues abuse public records, audits are warranted. Marilyn? Silent, but not everyone was. At 11:13, I got the email. No subject, no text, just an image. My house, photographed from the sidewalk, nighttime, curtains drawn, my silhouette faint behind them. I stared at it, my finger hovering over delete, and then saved it instead. By noon, I had a locksmith changing every bolt and hinge. At 2:45, Jess called from her car. You're not going to like this, she said, voice tight. I pulled land use petitions from Q1. The club filed to rezone the 9th for expanded event use. On what grounds? I asked. Executive privilege. With Evelyn, it has Harold's signature. I stopped breathing for a second. That's not possible. It's dated 3 months after he passed. The room spun. By 4, I was standing in the county records office, palms slick, breath short. A young clerk in tortoiseshell glasses pulled the file. Yep, it was notarized by a Robert Sturgis. He retired in April. Can I get a certified copy? Absolutely. She handed it to me in a thick manila sleeve. The signature, Harold's, was close. Convincing. but not his. I knew every curl and tilt of his pen. This wasn't his hand. It was his name stolen like a coat. I clutched the envelope and stepped outside into the late afternoon heat. The parking lot shimmered. I was halfway to my car when I saw it. A dark SUV, no plates on the front, engine already running. As I pulled out, it did too, 3 car lengths behind. I took the long way home, turned left twice, then right, still there. At the light on McDowell, I made a choice. Green turned yellow. I floored it. The tires squealed, the envelope slid off the seat, and my heart thundered all the way through the next 2 intersections. When I finally pulled into a grocery store lot, the SUV was gone. But the shaking in my hands wasn't. By morning, I had the document locked away in a new safe deposit box under my maiden name. Let them rattle the windows. They wouldn't get to it now. Jess called around 9:30. Legal analyst confirmed it, she said. Using a dead man's signature on a zoning petition? Fraud. That's felony territory. Even if it's buried in the filing? Especially then. I could hear her excitement barely contained. This is going to court. You ready? I didn't answer right away, because 20 minutes earlier, I'd gotten a call. Blocked number. I almost didn't pick up, but I did. Mrs. Carter, the voice said, deep and polished. Mark Callahan here. I've been meaning to reach out. Silence on my end. I think we got off on the wrong foot. There's no need for all this legal noise. I'm sure we could come to an understanding. I doubt that. I could make it worth your while. There it was, the velvet glove over the knife. I'm not for sale, I said, voice steady. Everyone's for sale, Mrs. Carter. The only difference is the number. I hung up. Now, as I stood at the end of my driveway, my hands clenched. My mailbox hung open, door bent backward. Letters gone, all of them. I took photos, filed a report, wrote the time down twice. That evening I drove to Greenwood Cemetery. Harold's marker sat beneath a row of yellowing pines. Simple, clean, no inscription but his name and the year he was born. I sat on the little bench beside it and just let the silence be what it was. I'm scared, I whispered finally. The words caught in my throat. But I'm not done. A breeze moved the dry leaves, scraping softly across the path. I closed my eyes, tried to picture his face. Not the day we married, not the day he died, but a regular Tuesday morning, toast crumbs on his chin. That made me smile. As I stood to leave, something caught my eye. Fresh lilies, same kind Marilyn brought to my porch. Planted not in a vase, but tucked into the earth, stem down, like someone didn't want them to be noticed. I stared at them for a long moment, then whispered, I know who you're working with now, and walked away without looking back. At 6:14 a.m., I found it, beneath the front door. Thick cream envelope. No postage. Just one word on the front in block letters. Confidential. Inside, a typed letter from the club's lawyers. In the spirit of avoiding protracted legal proceedings, we offer a final resolution package. $250,000 in compensation in exchange for immediate cessation of claims and return of Parcel 9. A check was clipped to the second page, already signed, $250,000. My first laugh startled me. It cracked the morning quiet like glass. They thought they could buy my silence with hush money and legalese. I burned the check in a metal mixing bowl in the sink, watched the edges curl, blacken, vanish. By noon, I was at the zoning office with Jess. Councilman Lewis expedited the zoning change, the clerk explained, marked it under community development. Jess raised an eyebrow. Lewis plays golf at the club twice a week. We had our link. He's up for re-election, I said. Public heat will hurt. Jess tapped her phone. There's a community forum Thursday. I'll get you a spot on the docket. That night, I laid out my evidence on the kitchen table. Cobb's letter, Harold's deed, the financials Maurice gave me, the photos from the bluff. I started printing copies, the hum of the printer oddly soothing. Then, everything went black. Printer died. Lights snapped out. Even the fridge stilled. The house went silent. I grabbed the flashlight from the drawer and stepped into the hallway. Fuse boxes in the garage. I walked slow, heart thudding, When I opened the panel, I saw it immediately. The box was cracked straight through, wires yanked, glass fuses shattered like someone took a hammer to them. I stood there, beam of the flashlight shaking against the broken metal. Not a warning this time. A message. I took a slow breath. Then I said into the dark, "You're getting sloppy," and locked every door in the house. By 7:30 a.m., I had an electrician on the porch and a security tech scheduled by noon. "Looks like deliberate damage," the electrician said, peering into the busted fuse box. "Not something I'd call accidental." I nodded, but didn't answer. Just wrote the invoice to keep a paper trail. Jess showed up an hour later, eyes bright. "They flagged the club's title for Parcel 9, she said. "Registrars marked it under legal review. That means no transactions, no rezoning until it's cleared." I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "And Thursday? You're on the docket. Community forum at City Hall, 5 minutes max. You sure you're ready?" "I don't want a coach," I said. "I want them to see me." Jess nodded. "They will." Later that day, the mail came. One envelope. No return address. Inside, photocopies of internal club emails. One from Marilyn. "Scrub Parcel 9 from the site. Backdate the removal." Another. "Have Callahan sign the revised petition in Lewis's office. I don't want it traced back to ours." Each email time-stamped, each damning. Someone was feeding me. That night I drove back to Harold's grave. The lilies were still fresh, but there was something new tucked underneath. A folded note, sealed in a sandwich bag. "Keep pushing. They're hiding more." No signature, no handwriting I recognized. I looked around the quiet cemetery, empty in every direction. My pulse beat steady. Back at home, I laid everything out again. The photos, the forged petition, the emails. I didn't feel scared anymore. I felt angry and clear. I sat at the kitchen table, looked at Harold's photo on the fridge, and whispered, "It's not just about me anymore." Because now, it was war. The council chamber smelled like dust and lemon cleaner, rows of metal chairs, fluorescent lights, 50 strangers and one microphone. I waited near the back, documents clutched to my chest. Jess stood by the door, phone hidden in her coat pocket, camera already rolling. When they called my name, I walked slowly. At first my voice cracked. The microphone hissed. "My name is Evelyn Carter. My husband Harold and I were members of the Rose Bend Country Club for over 30 years. A few heads turned. I lifted the Cobb letter, held it so the council could see. "I'm here because Parcel 9, the 9th hole bluff, was never legally transferred to the club. It was sold to my husband by Lawrence Cobb with explicit restrictions." I paused, let the words settle. In violation of that deed, the club accepted private donations, forged rezoning documents, and falsified a signature belonging to my husband after he passed away. A murmur rippled across the room. Councilman Lewis stared hard at his shoes. "I have copies," I said simply, "and I'm submitting them today." I stepped down. Someone clapped. Then 2 more. After the session, an older man in a corduroy jacket pressed his card into my hand. "Name's Peter Dwyer," he said, "retired litigator. If they fight dirty, I fight dirtier." I smiled. "I may take you up on that." Back home, I felt something off. The side gate was ajar. Taped to the back door was a plain white envelope. Inside, a photograph. Me and Jess, seated at the cafe last week. Mid-conversation. A red circle drawn around both our heads. Below it, a single line in thick block print. "Next time alone." No signature, no return address. I walked to my bedroom, opened the closet, tugged down the old shoebox with Harold's handwriting on the side. "Do not toss. Tools." Inside, wrapped in cloth, lay the small revolver we bought during the break-ins in '98. I checked the cylinder. Still loaded. I set it on the table beside my reading glasses and said aloud, "Let them come." By Friday, the city had heard me. Not all of it, not loud, but enough. A morning radio show replayed a clip of my speech, voice a little warbled from the mic, but clear, firm. Jess's edited video passed 30,000 views by evening, shared by everyone from retired teachers to lawn care forums. Then came the summons, hand-delivered, white envelope again, always white. Councilman Lewis, harassment complaint, claiming I'd engaged in slanderous misinformation with intent to damage public trust. I didn't blink. I drove it straight to Peter Dwyer. He read it once, then again. "We'll file a counter," he said, tapping the edge of the paper. "Fraud, misuse of office, and forgery. If they want a courtroom, we'll give them one." I nodded, grateful he hadn't asked for a dime. That night, the porch light flickered. Then the motion lights clicked on. I moved to the window slowly. No car, no figure, just the wind rustling the shrubs near the edge of the lawn. I opened the front door. There, dead center on the welcome mat, was a black velvet jewelry box. I brought it inside with gloved hands, set it under the desk lamp, and opened it. Inside lay a single men's wedding band, scorched along one edge, blackened like it had been burned in a fire. It wasn't Harold's, but it was the same style. The message wasn't subtle. I stared at it for a long time before placing it into a plastic bag. Then I took Jess's advice, pulled out the tripod, set my phone to record, and I started talking. I laid out every document, every photograph, every voice recording and letter. I looked straight into the lens and said, "If anything happens to me, this doesn't end." Then I hit save. Because now it wasn't just evidence. It was insurance. I uploaded the video, encrypted it, and sent a copy to Jess, another to Peter, and one to a cloud service with a code only I knew. Then I got in the car and drove to the county clerk's office. Time to put it on the record. I was filling out the request for hearing, 3 carbon copies, all in fine print, when a man in a navy blazer approached my table. "Mrs. Carter?" I looked up. Tall, late 40s, salt in his dark beard. He held a file under one arm, worn and heavy. "I'm Richard Cobb. Lawrence was my grandfather." I stiffened. "I've been following the situation," he said, quietly. I narrowed my eyes. "And?" "I think my grandfather would have wanted you to have this." He handed me the file. Inside, copies of original blueprints from 1972, letters between Lawrence and Harold, even a photo of the Bluff's dedication day. None of it was in Harold's box. These never went to the club? Never. Grandpa didn't trust the board, said the Bluff belonged with someone who'd remember what it meant. I nodded once. "I appreciate it." "Be careful, Mrs. Carter," he said. "You're rattling a very old tree." He turned and walked away before I could ask more. Back home, I saw it immediately. The shed door, ajar. One pane of glass cracked, like someone punched it, then thought better. Inside, papers scattered across the floor. Old garden clippings, Harold's labeled seed tins, his notes on irrigation for the Bluff's edge. Nothing taken, nothing ruined, just ransacked enough to prove they could. I swept it up, relocked the door, and placed a new motion sensor inside. That night, Peter called. "The court's in, we're on the docket, 2 weeks from Monday." "Thank you, Peter." He paused. "They'll play dirty." "So will I." I poured myself a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table with Harold's photo propped beside me. "I got us here," I whispered. "Now it's time to finish this." The wind had that tense stillness to it, the kind that presses the trees flat before a thunderclap. I spent the morning sorting papers. Cobb's blueprints, the deed, the forged zoning request. Each page slipped into its own folder, labeled, ordered, ready. Peter sat across from me at the dining room table, glasses low on his nose. "They'll try to rattle you," he said. "Interruptions, objections, personal questions meant to distract." "I've been through menopause, Peter. They can't rattle me." He smiled, but only a little. In the afternoon, Jess stopped by. "Marilyn's vanished," she said. "Missed a fundraiser, 2 appearances, and the last club board meeting. She's hiding. Or the club's pushing her out. Either way, cracks are showing." At 6:15, a delivery van pulled up. No name, no company logo. The man handed me a sealed box, tipped his cap, and drove off. Inside was a photo album. Black leather, clean edges, smelled faintly of cedar. I opened it slowly. Inside, black and white photos. Dozens. All from the Bluff's early days. Community picnics, kids racing with balloons, Harold in his khakis planting the first sapling near the edge. Each image, like a heartbeat, I thought I'd lost. In the back sleeve, folded once, a note. "You're not alone." No name, just the same block lettering as before, but this time without the threat. That night, I took down Harold's letters again, read them slowly, like prayer beads in my fingers. Then I opened the closet and pulled out the navy skirt suit I wore the day we signed the deed. Still pressed, still tailored, still mine. I hung it on the door and smoothed the lapels with one hand. Tomorrow was the hearing, and I was ready. The morning broke gray and sharp, like the inside of a bell. I dressed in silence, navy suit, pearl earrings, the ring Harold gave me on our 10th. Jess drove. Peter rode shotgun, quietly rereading the filing brief. The courthouse was small, red brick, with uneven flagstone steps. Inside, the courtroom hummed with quiet tension. The club had brought their full legal armor. 3 suits, 1 woman, all clipped smiles and polished shoes. Their opening argument dripped with disdain. "The clause was ceremonial," one said, "a symbolic gesture from an aging founder, never meant to be enforced." Peter rose slowly, held up the deed, then the letter. "Ceremonial?" he said, voice even. "Then why file it at county? Why notarize it? Why include a non-transfer clause in legal terms?" The club's lawyer shifted. Then came the forgery. They displayed the zoning petition. Smug. Peter turned to me. I stood. "My husband died January 17, 2022. I said nothing else. The courtroom held its breath. Councilman Lewis took the stand, dabbing sweat from his brow, claimed no knowledge, claimed procedural errors. Peter introduced the fundraiser photo, tuxedos on the bluff, then Maurice's reports, the payments, the ghost payroll, each paper a nail. The judge, a woman in her 60s, glasses on a chain, nodded once. "I'll issue a ruling in 7 days," she said. No hint of which way. Outside, the sky had turned a clearer blue, cold but not biting. I breathed it in. Jess touched my shoulder. "You did it." Peter nodded. "We're in the home stretch." As they walked toward the lot, my phone buzzed. Blocked number. I opened the message. "You opened the gate. Now let it burn." No name, no punctuation. I stared at it for a long moment, then locked my phone and kept walking forward. The days crept slow. I filled them with small things, polishing silver, pruning the rosebush Harold never let me touch, refiling documents even though they were already in order. Jess landed a podcast interview. 30 minutes, she said. "They'll edit it clean. Just tell the truth." Peter, meanwhile, was prepping press quotes. "In case we win or lose or get sued again, always better to be ready." That afternoon, I drove to Maurice's bungalow with a bag of groceries and a thank you card. He looked pale when he answered the door. "They came by," he said. "Didn't knock, just stood near the fence, watching." "Who?" He didn't answer, just handed me a manila folder. "I kept one thing off the books," he said. "Didn't want it found." Inside, a ledger, club payments to unnamed consultants. Big sums, no descriptions. One name stood out. R. Tellis. I'd seen it once before, on a business card, in the hand of the man driving the SUV that tailed me. "I think they hired him to scare you," Maurice said. I nodded. He failed. That night, I dreamed of Harold planting tomatoes in the shed. I woke to sirens. The smoke clawed under the door like fingers. I ran barefoot into the backyard and saw it. The shed, my shed, our shed, engulfed. Flames bright against the black sky. The fire crews came fast. Too late. The journals, the seed notes, gone. But the house stood untouched. Not an accident. A message. As the sun broke the horizon, I stepped into the singed grass. Ash coated my hands. I sifted it between my fingers. Soft. Bitter. Final. I turned to where the shed used to stand and whispered, "That was the last warning," and meant it. The morning after the fire, I placed what was left of Harold's journals, ash-smudged corners, half-melted binder rings, into a canvas tote. Jess made a call to someone she knew. "He owes me a favor," she said. "He'll test it quiet. Look for accelerants." By noon, Peter texted me a photo. A letterhead from Callahan's law firm, full of chest-puffing phrases, reckless claims, incitement to defame, future civil consequences. Peter's message said, "They're sweating. That's a good sign." I smiled for the first time all day. At the church luncheon, I expected stiff shoulders. Instead, 3 different women came up and squeezed my hand. "We remember Cobb," one whispered. "The old days were better." Another slipped me a pound cake wrapped in wax paper. Even Pastor Gaines offered a quiet nod. "They're watching," Jess said later, "and they're listening." That evening, I met Richard Cobb at a roadside diner off Highway 4. He slid into the booth like someone trying not to be seen, then handed me a small plastic case labeled in faded Sharpie, "LC, raw tapes." "I digitized these last summer. Never got around to listening until now," he said. "This one, July '85, your name comes up." I took it home, locked the doors, drew the curtains, set the tape to play. Cobb's voice, grainy but strong. "Callahan tried to buy me out last spring, said he could elevate the land. But that man doesn't build. He leans. He leverages." A rustle. "I told Harold, if he ever gets close, shut it all down." I sat with that a long time. Then, lit by a single candle, I started transcribing every word by hand, letter by letter, sentence by sentence. When the tape clicked off, I looked up at Harold's photo on the wall and whispered, "You gave me everything I need," then turned the page and kept writing. 3 days left. I didn't sleep much, just sat in the study, surrounded by piles of paper and the steady ticking of Harold's old desk clock. Cobb's transcript, the fundraiser receipts, the zoning petition with Harold's forged name, every page numbered, scanned, indexed. Jess called just after noon. "You're going to want to pick up next month's North Valley Review." They printed it? Full spread, photo of the bluff at sunrise. Title reads, "The Widow, the Club, and the Land They Tried to Steal." I almost laughed. Almost. Then came Marilyn. A press release, cold, polished, hollow. "Mrs. Carter is delusional," it read. "Her grief has led her to fabricate claims, and it is a tragedy to see Harold's memory weaponized this way." I read it once, then deleted it. Desperation had a new tone now, shrill, defensive. At dusk, my phone rang. Richard again. "Got a call. Anonymous tip," he said, breath tight. "They're trying to move assets, liquidate, cover their trail before the judge rules." "Parcel 9? Go now." Jess was at my porch in 7 minutes flat. We drove fast, headlights off down side streets. At the county clerk's, the building lights were still on. A sleepy attendant buzzed us through. I asked for transfer filings on Parcel 9. She pulled up the screen. Filed today. Quiet title shift. From the club to an LLC in Delaware. "They're trying to bury it," Jess said, voice low. I handed her Peter's injunction forms. "We need to file this. Emergency block. Fraud concern." The clerk read it, then looked at me, then at Jess. She stamped it once. Bam. Seal. Ink. Date. "Your filing supersedes theirs," she said. "At least until the judge rules." I slid the document into my bag. Not with shaking hands. Not this time. Just steady fingers and clean breath. "Now try and take it," I said aloud, and meant it. By sunrise, I'd read through every line of Peter's final statement twice. He was meeting with the judge privately to deliver the package. I'd join for formal review the next morning. Jess forwarded me an email she received overnight. No subject line, no signature, just scanned pages. Club memo marked, "Confidential internal communication." In the event of an unfavorable ruling, they were planning to offload everything, shift liability onto Marilyn, restructure leadership quietly. Predated resignation letters. They were circling wagons, but turning their backs to each other. I felt the smallest flicker of satisfaction. That night, as I sat at the kitchen table, reheating leftover pot roast, the doorbell rang. Not a knock, a bell. I opened the door slowly. A woman stood there, early 40s, denim jacket, eyes like thunderclouds. "I'm Sarah Teller," she said. "I used to work for Councilman Lewis." I didn't speak, just waited. "He made me notarize something last year, said it was urgent, said I didn't need to read it." She looked down. "It was the zoning petition." My breath caught. "I didn't know until I saw your name in the paper. Then I checked the records. It was dated weeks after your husband's passing." She handed me a manila envelope. "My affidavit. Signed. I'll testify if it comes to it. I couldn't hold it anymore." I reached out and took it gently. "Thank you," I said. She nodded, stepped backward, and was gone before I could offer her tea or even a chair. I opened the envelope under the desk lamp. Clean signature, clear dates. Notarized by someone else this time. I added it to the evidence folder, slid it into the bottom drawer, and turned the lock with steady hands. Then I said low and certain, "Now we have teeth." I wore Harold's old field jacket. Not for warmth, for weight. The fabric held memory, like soil held roots. Peter met me at the courthouse steps, briefcase tight in his grip. Jess was already inside, laptop open, eyes scanning every corner like a hawk. We entered together. The courtroom was quieter than before, a different air. Sarah Teller sat in the back row, hands folded, eyes forward. She gave me a soft nod. The judge took her seat. "I've reviewed the late-stage submissions," she said. "The court accepts the affidavit of Sarah Teller and related documentation." Callahan's team leapt to object. "Too close to decision. Undue influence. Chain of custody unclear. Overruled," the judge said. Peter stood. His words were clean, surgical. No drama. Just facts. The deed. The clause. The forged petition. The misused public office. The ghost payroll. The intimidation. One by one, like stones laid in a river. Then it was my turn. I took the stand. No script. "I'm not here to rewrite history," I said, "just to protect what was already written." The Cobb letter, the photos, the community gatherings on that bluff. My voice didn't shake. Not once. The judge nodded, made no comment. Then the lawyers did their closing spin, polished and hollow. Just before the gavel fell, a door opened at the back. Marilyn, hair down, no makeup. She slipped into the last row, eyes locked on mine. She didn't speak. Neither did I. The judge stood. "Ruling will be issued within 24 hours. This session is closed." Outside, the sky was the color of wet ash. I took Jess's hand in mine. The first drop of rain kissed the back of my wrist, and I said without opening my eyes, "It's in motion now." The house was still. No ticking clocks, no radio. Just the hush of a town holding its breath with me. Jess sat at the dining table, laptop open. She hit refresh every hour like it was ritual. Peter came by mid-morning. "No ruling yet," he said. "That's not bad news." But the weight in his eyes said he knew it could still swing. I couldn't sit. By early afternoon, I drove to the bluff. The wind had teeth, but the sky was blinding blue. The bench Harold and I helped install back in '89 still stood. I sat, let my bones settle into the cold stone. That's when I saw it, a small envelope. Tucked beneath the bench, sealed with red wax. No name. I broke it gently. Inside, an old photograph. 4 people. The bluff in the background. Cobb, Harold, Callahan, Marilyn. All smiles. But the postures told a story. On the back, in small script. "Remember who stood where." I stared at it a long time, because Callahan stood just behind Marilyn, his hand at her back, and Harold stood squarely at Cobb's side. Back home, as the light began to fade, Jess's voice cracked through the quiet. "Evelyn," she said, "it's posted." I walked to the screen, read the first line. "The court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Evelyn Carter." "Read the rest right away." I just sat. Kitchen chair, fingers at my lips, and let the tears come like something buried too long. No cheers, no triumph, just a slow, grateful cracking open. Justice. At last. By dawn, I was front page news. Widow wins, back the bluff. Jess's article had gone statewide. The photo of me under that silver oak tree made me look stronger than I felt. Peter called it a clean win. No appeals filed, no injunctions, just a final stamp from the judge and silence from the club. Officially, they issued one sentence: "We respect the court's decision." Unofficially, I got a letter from Marilyn, handwritten, on embossed stationery I recognized from her hosting days. "I don't expect forgiveness," it read. "But the bluff was always supposed to be yours. I stopped listening a long time ago. I'm sorry." Her handwriting shook. I sat with it for hours, unsure what to feel. That afternoon, I went to the bluff. The grass was dry, the wind cooler. Someone had started a small memorial. Candles, bouquets, old photos taped to the bench. I recognized a few faces from church, from Harold's volunteer days. Maurice brought cider in a thermos, paper cups for everyone. Richard Cobb stood near the edge, answering questions from a young reporter, careful and kind. It felt right. Not triumphant, not loud, just quiet enough to breathe again. As the sun dipped low, painting the bluff gold, my phone buzzed. Voicemail. No name. I played it with the speaker low. A man's voice, not familiar. "You think it's over, but you haven't seen what's coming." Just that. No noise behind him. No trace. I stood still, phone heavy in my palm, because I knew that voice wasn't bluffing, and peace never comes easy. Not when the ground's still shifting under your feet. Peter played the voicemail 3 times in his office. Each time, his face set harder. "Masked call. Bounce through at least 4 proxies," he said. "Whoever did this knew what they were doing." Jess sat with arms folded tight. "We should post it. Let people hear." "Not yet," I said. "They want me to flinch. I won't give them the win." An hour later, Sarah called. "They left a note on my windshield," she said. "Typed, same tone, no signature." "They're pushing," I told her. "Means we're close." That evening, Maurice called. "Drone," he said. "Hovered 10 minutes, over my backyard." Next morning, Jess caught one drifting over my garden, small, quiet, watching. We reported it. The sheriff shrugged. "Without a face, there's not much we can do." The system only bites what it can see. I needed air. So I walked the bluff alone, thermos in hand. The wind carried the scent of wet pine and frost. That's when I saw the tracks, wide, fresh tire marks arcing near the bluff's edge. No tread-like town trucks, no notice filed for an event, no city tags. Someone had come, uninvited. I followed the marks with my eyes, then dropped to my knees near a patch of disturbed soil. Something silver caught the sun, half buried. I brushed gently, lifting it free. A metal pin, round, polished. Rose Bend Country Club. And on the back, 2 letters engraved small, but clear. R.C. Callahan's initials. I closed my fingers around it and stood. The wind picked up. The bluff didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt like a warning, but I didn't move, because I'd already survived the fire. And now, they were standing on ashes. Peter turned the pin over with a gloved hand. Club insignia, Callahan's initials. Not enough for court, but enough to rattle. Jess snapped a photo. carefully blurred the engraving, and posted it with the caption, "Found on the bluff. The story's not over." The response was immediate. Comments flooded in, some angry, some frightened, some ready to help. Richard called that evening. "There's something I need you to hear," he said, "off the record." We met at the old Grange Hall, 6 council members, gray-haired and tight-lipped. One of them, Edna Kincaid, slid a packet across the table. "The original Rosebend Charter," she said. "Buried clause, page 47. I flipped to it. "In the event that land dedicated to civic or public goodwill is found to be used for personal profit in contradiction of its intent, ownership may revert to the township." Richard leaned in. "They hid it, but it's real, and we can invoke it." I nodded, throat tight. Later I tried to call Sarah. No answer. By dusk I drove by her place. Mailbox stuffed, lights off, her car gone. Jess checked online. She scrubbed everything. The silence from the club was louder now than any threat. No meetings, no golf, no music from the pavilion, just fog and whispers. That night, I found another envelope on my porch. No stamp, no name. Inside, one Polaroid. The bluff at night, faint outline of trees, and in the lower corner, my silhouette, watching. On the back, in pen. "Step off, or we push." No flourish, no doubt. I walked inside, turned off the lights, and placed the photo beside Harold's picture. Then I whispered what I knew he'd say. "You'd tell me to stay." So I did. I woke before the birds. Sky pale, air still. The case was packed. Cobb's letter, Sarah's affidavit, the forged zoning slip, the club memo, and the town charter. Each document slid into its sleeve, edges straight. The case had been Harold's. Leather, scratched at the corners, faint smell of cedar and ink. I drove to town hall with the sunrise behind me. The emergency session was called by Richard Cobb. Edna Kincaid backed it. "Unprecedented," they said. "Necessary," I said. The chamber wasn't full, but the people who mattered were there. I stood at the podium, steady hands. "I'm invoking Article 4, Section 9 of the Rosebend Charter," I said. "The bluff has been used in violation of its intended purpose. I request formal reversion to the township." Peter nodded once from the side. Jess filmed, quiet and still. Edna spoke next, then Richard. When the vote came, it was swift. 5-2. Passed. The bluff was no longer theirs. It belonged to everyone. I didn't cry. I just smiled, nodded, and stepped out into the October light. That night, I poured tea in the quiet. The porch was still. Until I turned down the hallway. Something waited on my mirror, taped in the center. An envelope, white, but different. Inside, a single sheet, a blank deed, unsigned, undated. No names. A final gesture. Or surrender. I couldn't tell. I burned it in the sink, watching the flames catch slow and sure, flush the ash. Then I slept, deep, without fear. At dawn, I walked to the bluff barefoot. The grass was cold. The air was clean. I closed my eyes and whispered to the wind, "Still mine."